The hum of the old recorder was a comfort, a familiar whir that cut through the perpetual dimness of my small room in the outpost. It sat on my makeshift desk, right beside a stack of old geophysics journals and the rolled-up blueprints for a deep-sea drilling project I'd once spearheaded. Anne, my wife, had given me this recorder. She joked about my habit of talking to myself, said at least this way I'd have a record of my genius. Now it was just a way to record the end, I suppose. It used to be Sarah's, my daughter's. She'd made little plays with it. I kept it because, well, because. There was a photo on the desk, too, a small digital frame Anne had bought. A picture of us, smiling, from a beach trip down in Florida years ago, before everything went dark. I paused from tightening a tiny screw on the recorder, my eyes drifting to Anne's face. She was laughing in the picture, her eyes crinkling at the corners. But then I saw it. A faint line, a tiny wrinkle just above her left eyebrow, a furrow. Anne didn't have that wrinkle, I muttered, my finger ghosting over the screen, over her image. I knew her face better than my own. Every curve, every little freckle. That was not there, was it? I frowned. No, I was sure. But then, exhaustion does strange things to the mind. The outpost was a pressure cooker, even in the so-called twilight zone between the burning light and the freezing dark. Sleep was a luxury I hadn't known in I don't know how long. Maybe the light, I told myself, almost a whisper, or the angle. I must be misremembering. I shook my head, a wobbly, weak movement. A faint, almost bitter ghost of a smile pulled at my lips. Yeah, just misremembering. That's all it was. I'd just finished a new log entry. Monotony, mostly. Temperature readings, always too low, creeping lower, even here in the buffer zone. Wind patterns, resource dwindling. The usual. I slotted the old tape in, put on my headphones. The hiss of the analog recording began, then my own voice, flat, worn. The temperature outside the outpost is still maintaining at, that was my voice, I was sure of it. But then, the last few seconds, it wasn't my voice anymore. It was, echo, higher pitched, like a child's, Sarah's voice. It seemed to twist my words, dragging them out, repeating. Outside the outpost, outside the outpost, outside the outpost. A chill, an honest-to-God spike of ice went straight through me. I winced, ripping the headphones off, fumbling with the volume dial. My hands were shaking. I slammed the off button. The machine went silent. Static, I mumbled, my voice rough. Just static, or the old tape. It always does that, doesn't it? I tried to convince myself. It always happened, didn't it? I could almost feel a prickle on my neck, like someone was watching, from the recorder, from the very fabric of the air itself. I needed to clear my head. The mess room was usually a distraction. People, movement, the drone of the old television. I headed there, wanting a bit of something normal. A small cluster of survivors was hunched over the flickering screen in the corner. The image was grainy, constantly fuzzing, but it was news, or what passed for it now. A woman, a weather anchor, was on screen. Her face was too bright, too flawless, a relic from the before. She was talking about the weather, for our zone. And the forecast for the twilight zone, she said, her voice unnervingly cheerful, cutting through the static. Outside, through the reinforced polycomposite window, I could see thick snow falling, obscuring everything. The wind ripping at the outpost's outer plating like a living thing. "And the forecast for the twilight zone," she said, her voice unnervingly cheerful, cutting through the static. "On the way, today, sunshine and warmth everywhere. Temperature is rising, slowly but surely. Warmth throughout. You agree, don't you?" My breath caught. It was a stupid question, a rhetorical one, usually. But then she did it. Her eyes, those perfectly made-up eyes, swiveled. They looked straight at the camera, straight at me. No, not just me, at all of us. Her pupils seemed to deepen, like dark pools. And then her lips spread wider, wider than a human mouth should go. It wasn't a smile I'd ever seen before. It stretched, unnatural, showing too much of something. Gum, maybe? Teeth? Hard to tell with the static. She nodded, slowly, deliberately. The smile stayed fixed. Then she turned back to her green screen, perfectly composed once more. I felt a cold shiver, a wave of profound, bone-deep cold, race down my spine. My hand clenched, gripping the armrest of the nearest chair. I could feel the bitter cold seeping into my fingers, my arm bones. It wasn't just the ambient temperature. This was something else. "No," I whispered, my mouth dry. "No way. She knew I was watching." It was absurd, a pre-recorded message, an old broadcast loop. But the way she'd looked, the way she'd smiled, it felt personal. Near me, Sarah, not my Sarah, but a woman named Sarah, one of the outpost's few remaining medics, was sitting on an overturned crate, her eyes glued to the screen. She'd been staring there for a while. After the anchorman's smile, she let out a small, quiet giggle. It was a nervous sound at first, then it just went on. She started mumbling, low, disjointed words. Her eyes, unfocusing, stayed fixed on the TV. "Yes, warm sunshine," she whispered, a little louder this time. "Warm sunshine to the very end. It bestows blessings. Everything will melt, will become one." Her voice trailed off into another giggle, higher-pitched now, almost hysterical. One of the other guys, a grizzled mechanic named Hank, slowly turned his head. His eyes were wide, a strange glassy sheen to them as he, too, began to stare at the screen. I saw his lips move, silently, mimicking Sarah's words. I took a step back, then another. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down. It wasn't just my imagination. The cold was definitely stronger around me, as if trying to push me away from them. I felt that shiver again, a persistent chill that never quite left. It wasn't just an illusion. Sarah, Hank, others, some I hadn't even noticed, were now mumbling, their faces slack, their eyes reflecting the flickering screen. "It can spread," I thought, a sudden blinding terror hitting me. Those words, those thoughts, they're invading them. It's in their heads. It was like a virus, but for the mind. I stumbled back to my room, feeling a profound sickness in my gut. My hands were still shaking, I think. I don't remember much of the walk back. I pulled out my old journal, the one I used to record my observations, my dwindling sanity. I had to write it down. Everything. The anchorman's smile, Sarah's words. It had to be recorded. I uncapped my pen, my fingers feeling stiff and clumsy. I intended to write,
Heavy snow falling at the dark fringe, wind howling. But my hand just wouldn't cooperate. It felt numb, like it wasn't mine. I tried to force it. I pictured the words in my head. Snow, cold. But the pen moved, sketching something else. It wrote, almost on its own, warm light. Then, burning. I tried again, pressing harder, concentrating. My fingers cramped. The pen twitched, then scratched out another word, one I hadn't even thought of. Consumed. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I dropped the pen. My breathing was ragged, shallow. I stared at the words. Warm light, burning, consumed. They weren't what I wanted. They weren't what I thought. I looked up, out my window. The blizzard was still raging, a white wall of ice and fury. But then, reflected in the glass, my own face stared back at me. I blinked. My reflection didn't. Instead, its eyes were open, radiantly, unnervingly wide. They seemed to glow, to embrace the howling snow with a dazzling, scorching light. I stared at it, frozen. Just for a second. Then it was gone. A normal reflection again, eyes blinking when mine did. But the image, it was seared into my brain. The sheer, unfathomable disconnect. I needed to feel normal. Something. Anything. I picked up an old textbook, a detailed account of plate tectonics before the event. I tried to focus, to let the familiar scientific jargon wash over me. My mind, I told myself, could still comprehend the world. I read a page, then another, about the Earth's inner layers, its molten core, its rigid crust. I finished a paragraph, my eyes tired. When I turned the page, the diagram was different. It usually showed neat layers of rock, mantle, core. Now, it was a complex network, like nothing I'd ever seen in a geology book. Pulsating slightly. It looked organic, like veins, arteries, a vast vascular system woven into the very fabric of the planet itself. A very slow, very deep heartbeat. I felt a faint vibration in the table under my hand. I had a glass of filtered water beside me, from the outpost's industrial filter. It was supposed to be cold. I'd just poured it, but it felt warm, unnaturally so.